Steve. I want a divorce. I never realized that 4 little words could destroy the whole world around me. Unfortunately, my soon-to-be ex-wife said those words so easily. Every syllable flew off her tongue like she was ordering a regular menu item. There was no ceremony, no last meal. At least she was thoughtful. She gathered all my things and was waiting for me as soon as I crossed the threshold. My name is Steve Miller, and my loving wife is Julie. We are both just over 40, and our 2 children, Josh and Emily, are in college and don't live at home. My wife looks even better than the day we got married, despite having gained some weight from having kids. But further, her rigorous workout regimen has allowed her to shed unwanted weight and stay in optimal condition. Unfortunately, the same could not be said about me. Some men get a distinguished look as they get older. But me? A bald spot, a belly canopy, and a goatee with graying hiding my double chin. My silence must have been her cue to keep twisting the knife. Steve, it's not that I don't love you. It's just that I'm not attracted to you. I feel like we've grown apart over the last few years. And now that the kids are out of the house, there's really no reason for us to continue this charade. When we first got married, there were 3 of us at the altar. Julie, me, and our unborn child. Emily was unplanned, but she was our favorite child. I gave up my dream of going to college to become someone better. I became a laborer, taking any job I could find to put food on the table. I jumped from one job to another. Our love seemed to blossom because 2 years later, Josh came into the world. Since Julie wanted to stay home, I had to work twice as hard to make sure we had everything we needed for our growing family. 10 years ago, I stopped jumping from one dead-end job to another to secure my family's financial future. 10 years ago, I earned an online degree while working 40 to 50 hours. It was grueling trying to work full-time and then still take classes. However, I made that sacrifice because I knew my family depended on me. Julie was a stay-at-home mom, raising the kids and going to parent-teacher conferences. It's not like I cheated on my wife all those 10 years. Well, not in the purest sense of the word. While I had every opportunity to visit strip clubs or host a call girl in my hotel room, the money I made went entirely back into the family. The life of a counselor is feast or famine. There are some months when you have clients, but there are other times when you wonder if you'll be able to put food on the table, and that's just the right side of my brain talking. The left side loves my wife, so the thought of even flirting on the side goes against every fiber of my being. No, I'm married to my job. With my wife being a stay-at-home mom and my desire for my kids to have the best of everything, I worked my 40 hours plus all my travel time. This meant I was away a lot. I was the very definition of a road warrior. I could very well be in New York City the first half of the week and San Diego the second half of the week. I missed a lot of family events, but it wasn't by choice. If I could have been home to see my kids graduate from 8th grade or even high school, I would have. However, college is expensive and money doesn't grow on trees. And it's not because I love my job. I'm a human resources consultant. I help organizations right-size their staff. While administration loved our lean processes and cost savings, I always encourage the organization to reinvest those savings back into their employees. Unfortunately, management doesn't always view their employees as assets, but rather as costs and expenses that need to be cut. While I can certainly put on rose-colored glasses and believe I am doing everyone good. After all, I know I'll be impacting the lives of families wherever I go. For example, a single mother worked for an organization as a data processor. She spent most of her time printing reports and storing them in folders. At the end of the week, she would destroy those reports. My research showed that no one was reading them. By simply not printing the reports, she not only eliminated paper costs and reduced the cost of shredding services, but she lost her position. I hated that aspect of my job. However, I always found the strength to go on with my life knowing that my wife and family loved me and needed me. True, I could have quit my job and found a job that did not require a lot of travel. However, that would have been a serious pay cut. Many of my arguments with Julie centered around money and financial issues. The kids needed her to be home to serve as their chauffeur, and any other set of reasons why she shouldn't work a full-time job. And let's not forget that they each needed to have the latest smartphone with data plans, the latest fashion trends, the biggest house, rental cars, and any other material possessions that were necessary to make their quality of life just perfect. I tried to breathe life back into our marriage. 20 years? That's it? Right. Can't we try? Steve, do you really want to pay someone to handle our divorce? Don't make this any harder than it already is. Her smile usually made me melt. This smile, however, was full of daggers. Think of it this way. We can start over while we're still young. I felt completely helpless. I don't know how I managed to resist. I wanted to fall to my knees and beg my Rock of Gibraltar, my North Star, not to leave me. Julie, I can quit my job. I can find something locally. We can try to make it work. I know I haven't been here. Not that I like being on the road all the time. Please, we had something once. We just need to rekindle that flame. My pleas and unwillingness to accept what she thought was inevitable began to weigh on her. Steve, you're starting to sound like a wuss. A real man accepts his fate and deals with it. Her betrayal struck a nerve. When we were young and all my friends wanted to go to a party or even just hang out, my call to society was always, a real man accepts his fate and deals with it. I had a responsibility to my wife and children. I needed to grow up fast. Julia always made love to me as a reward for being a man and not a reckless boy. I'm sure my wife said something when she found her voice, but I wasn't listening anymore. I just picked up the suitcases she had packed for me, walked out to my car, and drove away. Julie was crying, pounding on the windshield, begging me to stop and apologizing. Before today, I would have seen those tears and done everything I could to comfort and make those tears disappear. But Othello called a woman's tears crocodile tears for a reason. I found myself going to some Irish pub that all my friends were raving about on Facebook. With all my traveling, I'd never had the opportunity to visit. It was a strange and quiet place. Somewhere you could drink away your misery and not be disturbed for hours. There you are. A woman's voice interrupted my deep philosophical discussion with a glass of Southern comfort. Looking up at the sound of the woman's voice, I noticed that several hours had passed. Heather Wilson, my personal assistant, had found a seat next to me at the bar. Your daughter is terribly worried. She's tried calling you a dozen times. When she couldn't reach you, she called me. She paused for a moment to take my hand. Fortunately, it was the same hand that held my whiskey glass. She told me what had happened. I'm so sorry, Steve. I shifted my gaze from my glass to my phone. There were indeed a lot of missed calls from both Emily and that stupid bitch. I just shook my head and said, looking into my amber reflection, I'm not in the mood to hear how right this is. And there it is. Karma really is a real bitch. All those people whose lives I've spent these years living have finally gotten their cosmic justice. My family was rightly evaluating my role as a husband and father. Look, why don't you get a hotel room and get some sleep? Maybe after you get some sleep, things will be different in the morning. I don't know what's worse. The fact that I hate and want to hurt the woman I love so much, or the fact that I hate myself for wanting to hurt the woman I love. Somehow Heather got me out of the bar and into the hotel. One sip and I didn't even touch it. I went to that bar with the intention of drowning my sorrows. Unfortunately, I don't like to drink, and I certainly can't stand the taste of Southern comfort. Sleep did not come easily. All the work and lack of entertainment makes me a dull boy. Eventually, sleep did come. The next day, however, brought its own form of terror. I tried to face my wife and talk to her at the table, something Heather insisted on. After all, 20 years of marriage is worth saving, right? Unfortunately, she wasn't home. Knowing Julie, there was only one place she could be, the gym. I didn't necessarily want to make a public scene, but I needed to talk to her, and she owed me at least that much. As I entered the gym, I immediately saw my wife, but she didn't notice me. God, she looked so good. The sports bra she wore was tight around her breasts, showing off her lushness. The cropped cut showed off her tone and tan. The yoga pants hugged every curve of her body, flaunting her well-molded ass. She seemed to be in good spirits, as if her life hadn't missed a beat. Hey, buddy, don't stare too long at that beautiful piece of ass. Unless you're Tweedledum or Tweedledick, you're not going anywhere near this woman. Believe me, I've tried, admitted some muscular guy who didn't have a neck. I beg your pardon? The man pointed to something that looked like a walking mass of muscle with a head attached to it. The man grabbed my wife's ass and lifted her easily. She wrapped her legs around his waist and her arms around his neck and began to discuss something intimate. "This is Tweedledum, all muscle and no brain," my newfound friend explains. "However, he apparently has all the right muscles in all the right places for that ass."
Oh.
The tone of my voice only spurred my friend on, as if he wanted to crush my mood even more. And behind him, Tweedledick! And indeed, as soon as Tweedledum lowered my wife to the ground, she walked over to the other thug. Unlike the embrace she shared with Doom, Julie had only one leg around the man's waist while his arm supported her thigh and ass. His hands moved with the feel of something familiar. More importantly, they shared an intimate and lingering kiss. "Damn, they should probably get a room, huh, buddy?" smirked the guy next to me. Indeed, their actions were as close as they could ever get. It's clear now that separation isn't the only reason for my divorce. The alpha male in me wanted to rush right in there and get my wife back. However, the man who actually uses his brain cells realized that my alpha male would be crushed physically by both of these Neanderthals, and neither of them would break a sweat. For a brief moment, part of me wanted to feel the physical pain so that the emotional pain would be more complete. "Oh, there's her boy." "Man, I'd love to be the guy who knocked this girl up. When it rains, it pours." I hoped my son would raise my banner and defend his father's honor. I hoped he would take offense at his mother's behavior. Not because I wanted him to fight for me, but because he needed to see that these people were tearing his family apart. But he didn't. My son didn't like team sports when he was younger. He was ridiculed in school for dropping passes, missing baskets, or knocking the ball away during a game. When he announced he was starting wrestling and weightlifting, I was proud of him. He had my competitive spirit, and I thought he was overcoming those jerks at school by becoming this chiseled, handsome guy based on the advice I gave him on the phone. Now I see that Tweedledum and Tweedledick probably influenced his decision by being his surrogate fathers. All I needed was for my daughter to show up, for my family's betrayal to be complete. I walked out the door. What good was a fight? I'd already lost, and I didn't even know there had been a battle. The gods must have known about the bitch karma had given me. As I started the car, the chorus from Fleetwood Mac's "Woman of Gold Dust" came on the radio. "Well, did she make you cry? Made you break down? Shattered your illusions of love? Now tell me, is it over now? Do you know how? To pick up the pieces and go home." Julia, it's been 2 years since my divorce. Maybe I was having a midlife crisis. Or maybe I was just a selfish bitch who didn't want to give up the single woman lifestyle I had created while my ex-husband was away, working long, hard hours to support his family. The divorce went as smoothly as could be expected. I got the house and all the equity in the house, and he got his pension and airline miles. The only thing I really didn't expect was that when I tried to file for spousal support, his attorney brought in pictures of my infidelity to prove it. Not just with Rick, but Rick and Ed. Worse, he managed to take pictures of Rick and Ed groping me in front of my son at the gym. Where did he get those? I don't know. Steve was a gentleman, though. He didn't want to change the dissolution of the marriage from irreconcilable differences to my cheating. No, he just didn't want to pay his ex-whore alimony. That was my lover's responsibility. I'm paraphrasing, but in retrospect, I'm sure that's what he was thinking. The judge was also thinking the same thing. Steve continued to pay his children's college expenses while they were in school. But since Emily was 20 and Josh was 18, he didn't have to pay child support. At first glance, my life was lonely when Steve got his degree and started working as a human resources counselor. He was gone and was home on weekends, and those were the good times. When things were slow, he stayed home, but he was on a roll. It was like every dollar spent was another complaint or another screaming match between me and him. Thankfully, I had kids, but they always needed me to take them to practice, or take them shopping, or take them to friends' houses. If they weren't busy after school, they were home. And like all kids, they fought. The need to be both mother and father pressured me, and I resented Steve being gone so often. But don't get me wrong. When Steve was home, he was the best husband a woman could ever dream of. He performed my sweet deeds without question, or paid for them if he couldn't do it himself. He always sent flowers on important days. My birthday, our anniversary, Sweetheart's Day, Valentine's Day, and even the day we met. He always called and tried to cheer me up when I was down. Having Skype was great, so the kids and I could always see him when he called. He may not have been home, but he was always there in digital video. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough for me. At least it wasn't at the time. Steve encouraged me to join a gym. At first, I was angry with him. Was he insinuating that I was fat? That asshole let himself slack off too. He was always eating fast food on those damn business trips. How dare he suggest I go to the gym to lose weight? However, he explained his reasoning. He must have realized that I had very little adult contact and that I was losing myself in the role of mother. Steve understood me so well. No wonder he ended up in human resources. He is good with people. Some part of me wished I could be as insightful as he is. Maybe I wouldn't be where I am today if I had been smarter. The baby fat didn't come off at first. Going to the gym was a chore. All the women there were so pretty and fit. I felt like a cow being led to the slaughter. Maybe I was their class project, or maybe I was just another piece of fresh meat. Whatever the case, Rick and Ed took me under their wing and helped me develop a strength training plan. At first I thought Rick and Ed were just gym rats trying to help someone who was struggling. I fully expected them to dump me for the younger girls once I got the hang of it. When the weight started to drop and stay off, they shared my excitement. I wanted to share it with Steve. I proudly showed off my new body to my husband over Skype. But gosh, he seemed so melancholy and so darn depressed. He was grateful and supportive in every way he could, but you could tell from his voice that he was depressed. It got to the point where I hated calling him. I didn't want to hear about his bad day. Not all of us are losers. Since I'd been around Rick and Ed all week, their manly physiques were certainly pleasing to the eye. So when Steve came home showing signs of piggishness and ill health, I wanted nothing to do with him. He certainly would have wanted some love. I fulfilled my duties as a wife, though I'm sure the Academy would have given me an Oscar a few times for some of my performances. Part of me was grateful that he didn't have the strength or stamina to go there more than once. I think I would have thrown up if I had to do it twice in one night. Lucky for me, with the lights off, everyone looks the same. Again, looking back, I realized that if I had seen or known how much his job was affecting him, or how my indifference to his emotional well-being was hurting him, maybe things would have been different. But no, I was lost in my own world, and it certainly didn't help when Rick became Rick the asshole. His body was a work of art. He probably went back in time so Michelangelo could use his body as a model for a statue of David. Sure, Rick probably took advantage of my vulnerability when my husband left, but I let myself be taken. Rick's body was nothing more than a schoolgirl fantasy. The fact that he wanted to be with me only intensified that feeling. And it wasn't a one-night stand. Rick was constantly watching me, whether it was in the women's locker room at the gym, the men's locker room at the gym, or at my house when the kids were gone. He had a sex drive that drove me crazy. There were times when we couldn't even get to my house and we would stop somewhere and do it. I felt alive again. I felt young and wild and free. That's something I hadn't felt since I married Steve. Well, his buddy, Ed, must have known about our dating and acted like a little kid. Rick encouraged me to be nicer to his friend. Well, being nicer meant exposing me to Ed. Each of them had their own pros to sex. But as I look back, neither of them wanted to cuddle afterward. If I could, I'd go back in time and spank my stupid ass. "You should have seen the flowers delivered to Sammy," exclaimed one of my co-workers. "It's pretty funny, really. The whole time I was married to Steve, he always wanted me to get a job so I could provide extra income. He whined about his job and how he wished he was doing something else. I was such a bitch when I told him to go for it and stop whining about my job. But now that we're divorced, I work 40 hours as a clerk in a billing office. Instead of telling him to stop whining, I should have told him to take out his frustration at the gym. It's one of the few things that helps me relax after a long work week." "From her mystery lover?" the other asked in a teasing tone. I hated Sammy, not because of anything she did, but because she was 10 years younger and had a tight little body. Worst of all, she was the kind of girl who knows she's attractive but doesn't flaunt it. And by not flaunting it, she just waves it in your face that she's gorgeous while you get older. I'm sure she laughs insanely, knowing that I have to work twice as hard at the gym to maintain what I have. When she gets those heart-shaped boxes filled with chocolate, she shares her goodies with all of her coworkers. I've got her figured out. I notice she doesn't eat a bite. She makes all the women around her fatter so she can look so much better. Stupid bitch. I couldn't resist starting to dig in. Yeah, why haven't we seen this supposed Romeo? All we see is you in these pictures. I'm sure everyone in the room could hear my envy, especially with that bouquet of roses in a crystal vase on her desk. Every weekend, Sammy and her boyfriend always seem to be traveling somewhere or doing something exciting. She has pictures of her kayaking the Cumberland River or standing under a waterfall at Burgess Falls State Park. If they're not doing nature, she's going to a concert at the Grand Ole Opry or hanging out on the Lower Broad listening to live music. Oh, you guys, Sammy playfully parries, ever so gently deflecting my attack. He just doesn't like being in front of the camera. He's self-conscious about his appearance. I don't know why. I mean, okay, yeah. He's bald, but he's bald by choice. I couldn't keep from laughing cynically, but she just continued. Combine that with his goatee and trim body. A blush covers her. A rose on a long stem? Again? Helen exclaimed, late to the party as usual. The woman gasped at every sweet gesture. Sammy, the smug bitch with the nose, nodded her head as she read the card that accompanied the bouquet of roses. He said he had something special for me tonight, and he invites you all to come if you'd like. He's rented the 3rd floor of Merchant's Restaurant on Lower Broad. All of you are welcome to bring a partner, and this dinner will be paid for. So we're finally going to meet this mystery man of yours? Yes, and just know that he's all mine, Sammy replied in a possessive tone. Not unless one of us steals it, came a voice from behind. I don't know who it was, maybe Carrie or Beth. They dropped their underpants faster than the French dropped their rifles. I haven't had a good lunch since the divorce. I wasn't about to pass up an opportunity like this. Steve and I usually went to the Watermark restaurant. He always reminded me to save room for dessert because he knew how much I loved strawberry jam cake. Rick would tell me off for dabbling in the frosting because it was greasy. Not to mention, Rick couldn't afford dinner at Watermark. I'd finally get a chance to show the big guy what a real dinner was, so I called him as soon as I got back to my table. Rick, one of the girls is having some kind of party at Merchant's tonight. Her boyfriend has rented the 3rd floor and dinner will be catered. Will you come with me? Oh, sorry, babe. I got my ATV out today. I'm gonna work on it. Why don't you come over and give me a massage? I'm sure it'll help me heal. God, that's all he thinks about. A nice date is going to the gym and then coming home for another workout under a blanket. If I'm lucky, we can go to the Longhorn Steakhouse and I can watch him eat a piece of beef in less than 15 minutes. Come on, Rick. We won't have to stay long. You can meet my friends and we can finally have a nice dinner with dishes and everything. Please. Can't you do that for me just once? Why don't you ask your son to come with you? I'm sure Josh would love to meet your friends. I'm sure he means Carrie and Beth because I always tell him they look like sluts in professional clothes. However, I'm also sure it was also meant as a veiled insult. You know full well that my son is in jail for not paying child support. You are such a jerk sometimes. I slammed my phone down in anger. His comments about my son really hurt. Josh was in jail for failing to keep up with his child support payments. Josh treated his women almost the same way Rick and Ed treated theirs. He had them until he got bored with them, then tossed them to the curb. The girls, however, often showed up on his doorstep pregnant with his child. Besides, the boy couldn't hold down a job to save his life. And God forbid, put on a damn condom. Those were traits he'd picked up from Rick and Ed. I would have asked Emily to come with me, but we hadn't spoken since the divorce was final. Although she understood my point of view, she felt I wasn't trying to make amends. She certainly didn't like either Rick or Ed. She felt uncomfortable around them, and she felt like they were always undressing her with their stares. Ed was just a big teddy bear, too stupid to have a lecherous bone in his body. He would be Rick's assistant and join in on whatever Rick was doing. So I intended to go to dinner alone. Who knows what the evening might bring? Exiting the elevator on the 3rd floor, I almost bumped into a man who might best be described as Marlboro. He was physically fit, but not a muscular athlete like Rick or Ed. He had a rugged look. He was bald, but close inspection would have shown that he was bald of his own accord. The goatee only emphasized his cowboy look. At first glance, I realized that this must be Sammy's boyfriend. However, when I looked into his eyes, I realized who he was, her personal, cold-blooded Steve Miller. Never in my life had I felt so embarrassed and humiliated, not because of Steve's actions, but because of my own. Here was a very attractive cowboy who had once been my husband and whom I had humiliated repeatedly. Well, he certainly remembered. Julie? The awkward moment certainly didn't go unnoticed by either of us. Steve, you look good. Has life treated you well? I was nervous. I was trying to make small talk. Deep down, some part of me clung to the hope that maybe it was just a coincidence that Steve was here. Maybe he's just a friend of someone's friend or something. Maybe I could erase the mistake. People deserve a second chance at life, right? He looked down at himself and then looked up again with his usual smile. God, I wished I could kiss him again. His hugs and kisses were the best. He made you feel like you were the only girl in the world. I took his hugs for granted. Well, I guess you could say things have changed for me. I'm no longer a consultant. I'm now the CEO and president of a staffing agency here in town. I don't have to travel, so I have plenty of time to go hiking and just relax to enjoy nature. He patted himself on his stomach. Worked out that tire. But look at you. You look as good as ever. Well, you know how much I love spending countless hours at the gym. Even as I said those words, I immediately wanted to take them back. The last thing I wanted him to remember was my gym time and my time with Rick and Ed. I could hit myself over the head with a piece of wood right now. Maybe I just thought he looked around quickly. I know he wanted to know if I was with someone. And yet Steve took it all in stride. So what brought you here? A date? Steve laughed a little and nodded. You could say that. He patted the pocket of his sports jacket, where I noticed a small bulge. I had no doubt that the bulge was about the same size as the small black velvet box that held the engagement ring. I invited her friends and family over for dinner so they could partake in the evening's festivities. There was so much I wanted to say. There was so much that I wanted to give back and try to get back the husband I had lost. However, the fight was over. The time for figuring things out was 2 years ago when I told him I wanted a divorce. I can't tell if my tears were tears of self-pity or tears of happiness for him. He deserved to be happy after I left him. My silence must have been his cue to continue. Julie, I had no idea you'd be here. Please know that tonight you're not. I quickly interrupted him. I know, Steve. I'm happy for you. Sammy is a very happy girl. My voice started to break. I whispered an apology and ran to the ladies' room. As I tried to pull myself together, I heard soft music playing a bittersweet song sung by Roxette. Listen to your heart when it calls to you. Listen to your heart. There's nothing more you can do. I don't know where you're going, and I don't know why. But first, listen to your heart. Say goodbye to it.